G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Jared Graybeal from Superfit Foods, and he's based in Atlanta, Georgia at the moment. Thanks for your time today, Jared.
Good to be here, man.
Let's start with how we know each other. So Scribe reached out to see if you would be good for the audience to come on the cast. You've recently written a book, so appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Good to be here. I'm excited for the conversation.
So tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
So Superfit Foods is a fully customizable, subscription-based healthy food company. We're based out of Jacksonville, Florida, Northeast Florida in the United States, and we ship nationwide, but our predominant market is the Northeast Florida region. People order online. We either ship it to their house, we deliver it locally, or they can choose from one of about 27 pickup locations that we have in the North Florida area. And we deliver every Monday and Thursday. It's an average of $8.50 cents a meal.
Great.
And it's a week-to-week subscription. We have an app that they can manage their account. They can upgrade, downgrade, skip a week, cancel, add snacks, add juices, all the fun stuff.
Please tell me you've got meals for kids, because my 8-year-old I'm battling with her at the moment to eat healthy food.
Yeah, so that's a funny story. Maybe not so funny, just an interesting one. About 3 years ago, I usually respond to interest at least in threes, right? I try not to jump the gun. And we launched something called the Lunchbox program, which was kids meals. We thought it'd be big, and it flopped. So we don't have a kids plan, but we have a lean down plan, which is basically, if your kid is, I would say 8 to 14, depending on how, if it's a boy and he's friggin' twice the size of me, then that's different. But 8 to 14, our lean down plan should fit. Our lean down plan is the most popular, and it's most popular among women. So it's pretty good size for a child.
Yeah, that's great. And particularly in America, but also Australia, obesity is a huge issue. So that would be very popular, I can see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, tell us how you started out.
So, from the age of 18, I got, into the fitness industry. I wanted to pursue a career as a personal trainer. But it's sort of the conundrum, the
selling time,
chicken or the egg, right? Like I didn't have experience, but I had a certification. And so I did, however, have experience in sales, and I got a job doing membership sales at a Gold's Gym, and moved up in the rankings, became a sales manager, got promoted, got a job offer from a different chain, moved up in that, did that for about 6 years as a general manager of a chain of health clubs, that are really big in the United States. And so in fast forward, by the end of 2014, I really knew that's not what I wanted to do long term. I wanted to make a shift. I'm very entrepreneurial. As a kid, I had a lot of entrepreneurial ventures, some of which got me in a lot of trouble, but it was still something that I was great at. And I decided to take a leap of faith and open my own gym. I put together a business plan. January of 2015, I pitched an investor. I got approved for about $250,000, and I moved from Jacksonville back to Lakeland, Florida, which is where I was born and raised. And the weekend that I moved back, that Sunday morning, I got a call from the investor, and he basically backed out. And this was my first rodeo, so I didn't know that people do that, I had no money to my name, and that was my last ditch effort. I risked it all to come back to Lakeland. And so I reached out to a buddy of mine who was a manager at a local gym. And I said, hey, man, I just want to come train. I maintain my certifications and I'm a hell of a trainer. So I started training one-on-one at a local gym. And within a month, I was fully booked and I was very happy. Happier than I probably had been in my entire career. And then a member approached me and he said, hey, I heard you wanted to open a gym. Do you still want to do that? And I didn't know this guy very well. He owned a local supplement company. He's a fitness guy. And I said, I really feel like God has redirected my path. And I don't know what that looks like, but I don't know that he wants me to open a gym here. And he was like, well, what about a meal prep company? You seem to know what you're doing there. And for context, I was a bodybuilder at the time, and all of my clients were on diet plans because I lived the lifestyle, and I gave them very realistic diet plans, nothing like I was eating, you know? And so my clients saw great results. And, you know, I'm a nutrition expert, nutritionist by trade. And so I said, yeah, we could start a meal prep company with no real like
Clue.
restaurant experience, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was basically it. And he wasn't an investor. He had good credit where I didn't. And we both invested $500 to start the company. That was basically a website, some flyers, and the first week of pay for our first cook. And I sold it. And within a week, we had 10 clients. 2 weeks, we had 20. Within a month, we had 50. And, you know, the average client's eating 10 meals a week. So that's 500 meals a week. You know, we went from his kitchen to a commissary kitchen. And within 6 months, we had built our own kitchen. That's when things got real. We had to get a bank loan. And that's where my partner really came into play, helping to get that bank loan. So that is how Superfit Foods started. We got incorporated in May of 2015. By November, I moved back to Jacksonville, and by February of 2016, we expanded to Jacksonville, and that's where I sort of relocated our headquarters and our operations and stuff like that.
Right. And how old were you when you launched in 2015?
25.
25. Wow. And just back on 2 points, when you lost that investor, did you lose much money with, you know, you were setting up, were any sunk costs lost there?
No, because the lease hadn't started. So the lease to our building was going to start the following week. All the equipment was on pre-order, but we hadn't paid for it to come.
Yep.
And then of course I needed to get in the building and hire the contractors. It wasn't a lot of structural work that needed to be done to this building. So I didn't know. So long story short, no, I didn't spend any money on just a ton of time on the business plan and all that stuff. But
and can you shed any light on those entrepreneurial pursuits that you said got you in trouble?
Absolutely. So we grew up poor, single dad, me and my brother, and we went to a pretty low income school because of the neighborhood that we grew up in, and we were the low income kids at the low income school.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we were on free lunch and didn't know it. You know what I mean? And so I just wanted to fit in. And I remember one of the things that I would do in sixth grade, I was a skateboarder, which is just kind of like, it makes you a little bit more edgy, more thrasher, right? You're probably prone to getting in more trouble. And so there was these two kids, they were twins, and they lived near me on the way to school. We would meet up in the morning before school, and we would go in this gas station, and they would steal a big bag of candy, and I would sort of distract the front desk guy. And then at school, I would sell all the candy. We'd split the money. And we did that a couple times until I thought, well, I don't need them to do that because I have money from the past couple. And so I would legitimize my operation and go buy the candy. Because I wasn't great at stealing. I feel like I'm one of those people that feels like everyone's always watching me, you know?
Yep.
And so that's what I did early on. I got good at skateboarding, and I got sponsored by a local shop, and they would give me stickers and small swag stuff, and I would flip it at school. These kids would pay $3 to $5 for a sticker that I got for free. And it was really just for the sake of affording pizza at lunch, because you had to have like $3 for a slice or something. And if you're on free lunch, you don't get to do that. And so then two, going out on the weekends,
yep.
You know, maybe movies or something, right? We were like 11 or 12. And then I started smoking weed.
Yep.
And so that became another opportunity for me. I remember, and of course, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but back then weed was strongly illegal. Now it's a lot different. And we would smoke, and I knew the guy that sold the pot, and so I would get it. And I remember getting like a $30 bag and having like a handful of friends be like, can you get me some? And I said, yeah. And so I sold them like 6 kids $5 bags, but I still had some. And I thought, I just made all my money back, and I have weed left over. And so then I thought, well, what if I did a little bit more? And that's what I did. And I would have $10 for the weekend. I would have weed for the weekend, and I would not have spent any money. And it grew from there. The guy started fronting me weed. And so at about 11, I started selling weed. And that was really what progressed until I was about 17. I moved out at 16 years old. I was making a little over $1,000 cash per week profit from my weed selling operation.
Yep.
It was kind of a big deal. I was selling to all my friends' parents, a lot of the teachers. Yeah. And it's funny, but I was really good at what I did. And I'll give you a little bit of context. At least back then, I don't know what it's like anymore because I don't buy pot I don't buy pot. So, but back then, to get weed, you had to wait around at a gas station for however long it takes the drug dealer to get there. He'll tell you 5 minutes, it's an hour. You buy 2 grams, he gives you 1.8. You ask for the good stuff, he gives you the medium grade stuff. And you had no, it was a monopoly, especially as a small white kid. You really didn't have a choice. And so I offered exactly what people paid for. I was on time. And I had a thing that I did. If you bought 1 gram, if you bought 2 grams, if you bought 5, 7, whatever, I gave you 0.1 more every single time.
Great.
Because I knew that the 1 out of 10 people are going to measure it.
Yep.
And they're going to see that Jared always gives you what you ask for and a little bit more. So I made a big deal out of that. I don't know where that comes from.
It sounds innate, like you've got a real entrepreneurial small business owner mindset and passion.
Yeah. And so of course, when you're really good at selling pot, you're probably going to get caught.
That was my question. Was I think the greatest measure of success in this line of business is whether you ever got caught or not.
Yeah. So at 17, I got caught. They had a warrant for my apartment that I had at the time, and pictures of me selling or like shaking hands with people in the parking lot. Very cliche movie type stuff. So they charged me as an adult because of the quantity, and kind of fast forward right after my senior year, it all kind of came to fruition, and I spent a couple months after my senior year in jail. And then after that, I spent 2 years on house arrest. And it was through that time, of course, that I made a strong transition to pursuing a career, a legal career, and
and a healthier one too.
Yeah, leveraging my gifts for something a little bit above the radar. And so that's what got me into fitness. And being in jail is what actually was one of the experiences that, one, I found God, but 2, I also found my passion for fitness and for training and all that stuff.
Great. That's a really interesting background. So back to Superfit Foods. Do you have any key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth over the last 6 years?
Yeah. So year one, I think year one's probably the most fascinating. We did a little under 500 grand in revenue. And then year 2, we did 0.9. Year 3, 1.2. Year 4, 1.5. Year 5, 2, right at 2 million.
That's phenomenal growth. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, no investing. We're virtually debt free at this point. So it has been a journey. It sounds real polished, but you peel back the layers and it's been a roller coaster.
Yep.
But yeah, I think average annual growth 18% when you look at the whole past 5.5, 6 years.
And what's it looking like now on an annualized basis?
I would say that this year we're tracking about 24%.
Yep.
So an even greater trajectory. And COVID, a lot of people think COVID skyrocketed us. It didn't. It added a cushion for sure.
Yep.
But we weren't positioned in a way that we could really leverage it dramatically, right? We don't have investment money or anything like that, so we didn't triple down.
Yep.
Plus, we started home delivery, and of course, our employees were getting sick, and it was very complicated. But we still grew through it. We launched some new products, so we're on track this year, like I said, for about 24% growth, and we're confident that we'll probably break that, despite what our first 2.5 months have shown.
So that's looking either side of 3 million then this year?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. And what about full-time equivalents? You started on your own in the business, and what are you up to now?
Yeah, so we started, I was the CEO and basically jack of all trades, and we had one cook in the very beginning, one full-time cook. Well, I wouldn't say full-time. Maybe at first he was 5 hours, and then he was 10 hours, and then...
Yeah, so 1.5 FTE to start with, yeah.
Yeah. Now we have 16 full-time employees and 9 part-time drivers.
Yep, right. So 19 or 20 full-time equivalents, that's great.
Yeah.
And when was the moment you felt like you'd succeeded?
I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah. Well, what does success look like to you?
Yeah. For me, I measure success in the impact that we get to make in the world or in the community around us. I've I think once you get to a place where you're financially stable, it's easier to say this. I recall obviously being poor and struggling to get above water. Success looks different. Success is just like help me get to there. But once you get there, at least for me, money is this arbitrary thing, and so for us, success is measured in the people that we reach. Um, the benefit of building a good company is that inevitably you'll profit more because of that.
Yep, totally agree. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Build a team that's passionate about the mission. There's some great marketers. There's a ton of great marketers out there. But for example, with what I do, we're selling healthy food, and it is a mission. We have to be mission driven. It's almost a ministry, because we don't call our food healthy and throw butter and a bunch of salt in it. We genuinely have healthy meal prep, and it's a challenge because when you drive home from work, you're going to pass 15 fast food restaurants that we're competing for that same attention and that same money, but they've got billions of dollars of backing. And so in order to build what we've built and to continue doing it, we have to have people that are passionate about the mission of empowering others to live happier, healthier lives, and doing that through healthy food, healthy, convenient, affordable food options. With that being said, finding passionate people, you have to find talented people.
Yeah.
That have a growth mindset, in my opinion, because what I've always taught our team is that I promise as the CEO, I will lead a company that grows. I can't predict for sure whether it'll grow 30% a year, 10% a year, but inevitably I will do whatever it takes to make sure this company year over year is growing. And you need to make it your personal responsibility as my employee to grow at that same trajectory, if not greater. If you fall behind that growth trajectory over time, you will eventually not fit the mold of what we're building.
Yeah.
So you need a team with a growth mindset. The flip side of that, though, is I've developed people over time that have outgrown the company. And so you will lose good people unless you can get the company to grow at their rate, if that makes sense.
That's a good point. And I also think a lot of people miss in business, particularly customer-facing businesses, whether it's hospitality or, even online businesses, your customer service team, I believe, is a big part of your marketing offer. And if you don't have people that are happy, normally happy, bubbly people that like, talking to someone on the phone or in person, you're really missing a trick there, because that is, where the impression of the business is hugely influenced.
100%. And that's our number one value, exemplary customer service. And there's a reason for the semantics. A lot of companies have customer service as one of their values, but you can serve customers badly and still call that customer service.
Yeah, it's true.
So we want to be exemplary. And what I mean by that is I want another small business owner to purchase from us, to call our office, to sign up online and get a follow-up text from one of our staff and say, we should be doing our customer service like they're doing it. Yep. So I want to set the example in how customer service is done. And we've always, I remember the whiteboard 6 years ago, like, what are our values? What do we stand for? And exemplary customer service was number one.
Yeah.
Because again, we're selling a product that is really, we're fighting against obesity. We're fighting against fast food. We're healthcare's worst enemy, right? If people all over the world ate our food, healthcare would not be that big of a business.
Yeah.
And so we have to remember that it's a struggle to get people to sign up.
Mm-hmm.
If they call with questions, we need to be enthusiastic about answering their questions.
Yep.
If we mess up one of their meals for whatever reason, we need to be enthusiastic about making it right, and we need to go over and above. And so we have standard operating procedures for everything. And that's one of those nuanced things that's hard to measure. But for example, when we mess a client up, it's sort of our rule of thumb is to double down on customer service. For example, if you get 2 meals wrong out of your 10 and it costs you $16, the refund's going to be $32.
Great.
Things like that.
Yeah, it's a really good philosophy or approach. Now, you use the Net Promoter Score, which I'm a big fan of, and you've sent me through your score, which is 63. It's a positive 63. It's not a percentage, just for the audience. I've talked about it before, how it's calculated, but Jared, that's a phenomenal result to consistently get 63, a positive 63. So that really speaks to what you were just saying then about your exemplary customer service.
Yeah. And, I'm no business guru. Maybe one day people will call me that in like 40 years or something. But I really honestly attribute this to one, to my passion for this industry, but two, to reading good business books and applying those principles to how we build the company. Like, I am no genius. I just read the books, but a lot of people read books. They just don't do what the books say.
No, they don't take action. They just read. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm a big Jim Collins fan. And so anybody listening to this podcast, if they're like, well, how does Jared know all this stuff about mission and values?
Yeah, absolutely. Built to Last, Good to Great.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books. I'm just finishing reading B 2.0, which is
so good.
I didn't even realize he wrote a book before Built to Last. And a friend of mine sent me a text. He just got the hard copy because you can't get the audio. So I go down to the pub every couple of weeks when I don't have my daughter for a night or two and just engross myself in that book. It is phenomenal because it pulls all his books together, really. If anyone's going to start, that's probably where I'd now recommend start, and then move on to, Built to Last, Good to Great.
Yeah, so those books really created a foundation. It was like, as I'm reading this, we're having a meeting the next day on the flywheel and on our BHAG and being mission driven and what are our values and reminding ourselves that every single day and putting it on the, writing it on the walls and things like that.
That's great. When you sent me through your Net Promoter Score as well, I noticed that you've got here, world class like Google, Marriott, and Amazon. They're around the 50 positive, but the market average is only about a 15 positive because it is a very hard thing to achieve at 50, let alone, and it's extraordinary, around the 70 mark, 60 to 70. So that just, shows how powerful what you're doing is translating into happy customers. Yeah. You've got an interesting story as to how you came across the Net Promoter Score. Do you want to just share that?
Yeah. So about a year and a half ago, I'll back up a little bit. I got pursued personally by someone trying to buy the business. And he offered a number at which I did not think was justifiable. It was flattering, but it wasn't what I thought the company was worth. And then it got me thinking, what is the company worth? And so, we have a weird company. We have a restaurant that's driven by e-commerce, right? So it's, is it EBITDA? Is it bottom line? What is it, right? Is it year over year revenue growth? What is it? And so I met with a broker about a year and a half ago and to evaluate the business. And that was one of the tools that we used among many others to find the true value of what we thought Superfit Foods was worth at the time.
Yeah, great. And because you're a predictable revenue business, well, firstly, have you read that book, Predictable Revenue?
I haven't, no.
I'll shoot it through to you after this. But I mean, do you follow a lot of the SaaS metrics, software as a service, lifetime value, customer acquisition costs, things like that? Yeah.
Yeah, we track all that and, LTV to CAC ratio, all that stuff.
Great. And Predictable Revenue, I think, would be a really good book for you to get into to help understand the economics of that recurring revenue model, which is, as the book says, predictable. So, and funding. So along the way, you started out with $500 each. You've taken on bank finance throughout that. Any other investors or any other ways of funding?
Yeah, we've taken debt, just haven't given any equity. So like bank loans, working capital loans, people on Wall Street, stuff like that. So, and then in 2018, September of 2018, I bought my partner out.
Oh, right. Yep.
Yeah. So I bought him out 2.5 years ago, right? Three and a half years ago?
3. Yeah. Yep.
And relocated headquarters to Jacksonville, transitioned our kitchen to Jacksonville, started shipping nationwide. It was a big season for us.
And how did that come about, that idea of him exiting? Did he approach you or you approached him? And how did it go in general?
Yeah, man. I mean, Superfit Foods, the story is complicated, man. There have been ups and downs. There have been times where we thought we wouldn't make it to next week or even tomorrow, putting our personal money in there time and time again. borrowing high interest rate, just some of the craziest stuff. And it got to be a lot. We're generating in the plus millions of revenue at this point, and my partner, he's got a wife, he's got a couple kids, he's got expectations there. And if this were to fail, basically he was scared to lose his family if the business failed.
Yep.
And he was like, "You got to buy me out." He was freaking out, and I agreed. And here's the complicated part. And for anybody listening, when you start a small business, you have to create an operating agreement from day one, and we did not.
It's commonly called also a shareholders agreement.
Yep, shareholders agreement. And he was the CFO, but he basically did nothing. And I did, he did 5%, I did 95%, and we got paid the same the whole time.
Geez, that would have grinded against you, I'm guessing.
It did. I just figured, it was his idea.
Yep.
And it was his credit that got the loan, but that can only really get you through for so long.
Yeah.
And so it was getting to be that time on my end. So around the same time that he said, "Man, you got to buy me out," and I thought, well, this is perfect timing because I didn't really have to push the envelope.
Yep.
And I made it happen. And that's kind of how it worked out. It was really, in my opinion, a God thing.
And how'd you go about valuing the business at the time?
Well, we didn't really evaluate the business. He certainly didn't get 50% of what the business was worth.
Yep.
It was really very simple because he was so scared. It was, number one, pay off all the debt that's associated with our names. That's the number one mission. And then number two, of course, pay him out X amount of capital.
Yep.
Of what he felt like his contribution was worth over the past couple of years. So still a chunk of money for sure. And the debt at the time was like $350,000.
Yeah.
So my mission, and he never thought we'd get there, but I operate a lot better without a dead weight. So within about a year and a half, I paid off all that debt, and it was, I had to refinance a lot. And he was not a very good CFO, so he got a lot of high interest debt, credit card debt, stuff like that.
But you would have got a massive return on him exiting just because you had that dead weight, that costs in your business.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I saw it, is like I can begin to pay, because I wouldn't pay myself as much as I thought I deserved because I had to pay double every time. And so there would be weeks where we look at the revenue and we think, oh, let's not get our paid this week. And I'm like, well, damn, I worked 60 hours this week. But okay. Because if I get paid 1,000, you get paid 1,000, and that's 2,000.
Yep.
So it was for sure an investment to be freed of that unnecessary weight.
Yeah. And any other lessons learned or advice you give to people about the shareholders agreement up front? What, anything else in there that you were missing when you guys had this chapter?
We were missing everything. The money we both put in, the responsibilities that we'll have moving forward. Of course, we had the equity. It was 50-50, but in retrospect, I don't know that was fair considering I was going to do everything. And so I would just think a lot more thoroughly about that in the very beginning. And that's something I've advised a handful of people over the years to do. And I've almost turned a few people away from starting businesses because they knew for sure years down the road they were not going to be 50-50 effort, and they didn't want to be 50-50 with the person. And so for me, it's a blessing because I wouldn't have started it if I was this wise back then.
Yep.
But at the same time, it was a huge lesson for me. And I think that I get to learn a lot of hard lessons so I can help other people.
Yep.
So I would just create an extremely detailed shareholder agreement, operating agreement. What's the expectations and what's the commitment level? What's the time commitment, day-to-day responsibilities, KPIs, right?
Yeah.
Things like that.
I think that's a big point that people miss, is that time commitment. I've been in a few businesses with more than one business partner, for example. I'm in one at the moment that we launched about a year ago. It's going really, really well. Online courses, we've got about 200 students in that, and we're all on different equity levels, 40, 30, 20, 10%. But I was very clear up front that then also translated to pro rata, the amount of time each of us had to put into the business. So I track my time. I don't expect my other three co-founders to, but they need to keep a rough handle on it. Otherwise, it's just not fair. The guy on 10%, needs the person on 40% needs to do obviously 4 times as many hours per week. It's not many hours across the 4 of us, But I've seen that in the past and experienced it where people get pissed off and really shitty when some of their business partners aren't pulling their weight. And it's a really hard one to manage and have those conversations, but you've got to have them, and also clearly up front, have it in writing.
Yeah. I mean, it's like any other relationship, which I don't think most people do those very well either, but, you're getting married to your business partner.
Yep.
At least, maybe not until death do us part, right? Because you can part before that. But until then, you guys are tied together. Every financial decision is going to affect both of you. And so you have to be far more strategic going into it and say, is this person someone that I want to live with for a while?
Yeah. And if you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Are you saying if I had a bunch more money, would I start the same business?
Yeah.
Now? No. Back then, yeah. I would do it over again in 2015, but if in 2021, I wouldn't start another meal prep company. We got in at a good time. The cost per click was 1/10 of what it is now when we're talking about the digital marketing.
Yeah.
Reaching people was a lot easier because it was a new concept and we were proving the concept. And so now it's a pretty saturated market, and we had the opportunity to get a small head start to build our value, and to where we've sort of, I don't want to say monopolized Northeast Florida, but we're definitely the biggest, most reputable, most consistent meal prep company in our respective area. And it would be difficult to do that now. It wouldn't be impossible. It's just maybe not the journey that I would embark on in 2021.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Selling food.
Yeah. Would be hard.
Yeah. Food is a qualitative property. Like, you and I could sit next to each other and eat a Superfit Foods chicken and white rice meal. And I can sit there and be like, this is the best chicken I've ever had. And you can sit there and be like, I'm never eating this chicken again. And it's the same exact chicken. As a food entrepreneur, I cannot control your taste buds.
Yep.
You can, however, make a product that the majority enjoy, but the minority will always exist. So there's that. But then again, we're in food production too. So the type of people that, as we scale, we employ, it's difficult. You got dishwashers, no call, no showing. You got part-time drivers, no call, no showing.
Yeah.
And we've a strong brand. We have good leadership. We treat our people well. They have good benefits and good pay. It's just, it's not a computer engineer job where you're expected to work 60 hours a week and make 120K a year,
Yeah.
So it's, building something like that is difficult because it never really changes. Our people over time, our full-time kitchen staff are never going to make 70 grand a year.
Yeah.
So we're, cycling through that. And that's been difficult for me because I don't come from that background. I come from the fitness industry. You have a lot of specialists in the fitness industry. So it is a little different.
And what area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
The restaurant side of things. Leadership comes natural to me, but on a broader scale, having to really narrow in or zone in my skills on learning to lead a team of, because 80% of our staff is in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think through that in the very beginning because we only had one. And so as it's grown, I understand, like I can negotiate product prices like nobody's business. And I can see the difference in chicken, like if you show me two different types of chicken before and after it's cooked, I can tell you which had more value and which one cost more, like stuff like that. So I had to spend time in the kitchen and learning those type of people and learning how production works and taking a really humble stance on that. Because, for example, if I would have started a gym, I know everything about that, right? Yeah. Nobody can tell me but in the food, I had to be really lean on my kitchen management staff for their expertise. And so I didn't lead with like this dominance. I led with curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, I'm still a relatively authoritative person. We got to stick to the values, pursue the mission. People come in on time, things like that. But as far as like, hey, how can we make our food fresher? Should we
Yeah.
start earlier? No, starting earlier, X, Y, Z. Okay. Well, what's another way? And so learning how to work with them, but still to lead has
Mm-hmm.
been a challenge because I don't know it all. So I've had
Yeah.
to learn a ton and trust my people who work under me to lead me. And
Yeah.
so that's been an interesting journey.
And what have you enjoyed the least about managing the fast growth?
Same thing.
Yep.
Like there's a few key people in the kitchen that I love to death, especially management staff. Some of the people that have been with you the longest. I've got one guy that's been with me since 3 months into the business. Like he's still with us. He's our kitchen general manager. He would go down with the ship as long as I'm on it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I love him to death, and I love a couple of our key people to death. But I just don't vibe with that type of person extremely well. So going to the kitchen for me is not a free day.
Mm-hmm.
It's very like purpose driven. I get some work done, and I don't get caught up in fun conversations because I just don't really relate to line cooks and prep cooks, and
Yep.
Because I didn't work back at the house in restaurants and stuff. So I'd say that's my least favorite because I'm a fitness guy. I want to talk about healthy food. I want to talk about expansion. I'm a leadership guy. I'm a business guy. I want to talk about numbers and marketing and stuff like that. So not that I've hated it. It's just the least that I've enjoyed it. I love working with the marketing team on how are we going to reach more people, and love working with the management staff on coming up with new menu items. But I don't love sitting down with the guy that's been late 3 times and saying, "Hey, man, what the heck?"
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's the next question. What do you love most about growing a small business?
Helping more people.
Mm-hmm.
With what we do, every new purchase is another person that we're going to help because we know that our product is far better than anything in the market. So that's really it. But on, internally, organizationally, working with the marketing team on either having successful strategy and reflecting on that and getting to look at it. We look at our analytics week over week, or brainstorming new strategies. How do we reach more people? And I've always had fun with that. I'm a psychology and marketing major. How to reach people, but think about how they think when we do reach them is fascinating to me. So I like that part.
Yeah. Have you read the book Influence by Robert Cialdini?
I have not.
I'll send you that one as well. It's one of my favorites, and I think you really enjoy it because it's about consumer behavior. There's a couple of great vignettes in this book, his own personal experiences where he cannot believe, because this is his job, but he's been influenced by what he calls compliance officers. And after I read this chapter once, I got stung by a charity organization, and I was at the door knowing exactly what was going on, but the power of the words that someone in marketing and head office had written, I just couldn't get out of the commitment. So it's a great book, and the toy story that he tells in the book about buying toys at Christmas time for his kids is very powerful as well. I think you really enjoy that.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
What's been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
It's not about me.
Yep.
The ups and downs, man. I remember years ago, and this has a lot to do with like the shift in my faith and stuff like that too. But I started the business around the same time, and so I lived a life again. I was poor growing up, so I don't think that I was bad for wanting this, but I just wanted to be successful.
Yep.
As a poor kid, being successful simply means having the same thing all your friends had growing up: nice house, nice car, money in the bank. You can eat good food anytime. You get to choose where you eat, where you go, having that freedom. And so I had a lot of ups and downs in my career prior to starting Superfit in terms of money management and girls and the cars and all that stuff. So starting Superfit Foods, I think I was still on that journey, but Superfit Foods, I don't have kids, but I think it's very much like it. Mm-hmm. Where you realize like, this is not about me. Like I have this living creature that if I neglect it, it will let a ton of people down. And of course I will fail personally. And so sacrificing my income, I think I made over the first 3 years, collectively about 70 grand.
Wow.
So sacrificing that and starting a consulting company on the side to supplement my income so I can continue to grow Superfit Foods, and sacrificing time to build this thing, because the mission, once we established the mission early on, it became tangible for me. That Superfit Foods, and of course the testimonies come in and the reviews roll in, and you're like, wow, this is far more than just having the six pack like it was for me.
Yep.
This is Susie's soccer mom not struggling to fit in her favorite pair of pants to have wine night with her girlfriends again. This is the guy who went through a divorce because his wife cheated on him, and because he let himself go, and now he's lost 100 pounds from eating our meals, found a new girl, he's engaged, and he's more confident than it was things like that I'm like, I have to make this work.
Yeah.
And we have to find more of these people. So not only do I have to make it work, I have to grow it.
Yeah.
Because there's more of the Susie soccer moms and the insecure Joes out there.
Yeah.
And so I had to remind myself over and over and over again on bad days and tough days and weeks maybe where the revenue wasn't looking right or the bottom line wasn't projecting the same. It's not about me, man. It's about the people.
What's the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Checking the numbers.
Yep.
If I were to say one habit, right? Because when you say that, I think of 5.
Yeah.
I think of how you treat your staff. I think of a bunch of stuff. But managing the numbers, and that's one thing that I learned from buying out my partner, because he was our CFO, but whenever he handed over the books to me, we had a ton of debt. Not only did we have debt, but we had an average of 22% interest on all of our debt.
Jeez. Wow.
Yeah. So I became, I don't want to say a guru. I became extremely competent in the area of finance and getting new loans that are, if they were 1% lower, I'm trading it out and paying off credit card debt and looking at my cash and all that stuff. And so since that time, day to day, I'm checking the bank, month to month. I've got a good bookkeeper to send me the books about 7 to 10 days after the month is over. And I am peeling back the layers on our numbers, but not only finance, analytics, right? Marketing analytics. Don't just trust these marketing companies to do your marketing for you. And even if you do trust them to do it for you, have them send you the numbers and teach you what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Your Google AdWords, your SEO, your rankings, your cost per click. You know what I mean? Like, don't just let success be a thing in and of itself. Find out why it's happening and multiply it.
Yeah. Do you love talking small business growth with other owners? We have a vibrant online community from many industries around the world. Plus, we regularly add new tools and resources for community members and host 2 webinars a month to help you grow your small business. growsmallbusiness.com. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team? So some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening.
Yeah. The biggest mistake I see myself and other leaders do time and time again is waiting too long to let the person go.
Yep. Yeah.
And
been there plenty of times. Yeah.
Yeah. I keep doing it, and all that does is falls right back on you. People don't like being let go regardless, but they certainly don't like being let go out of resentment because you're upset at them for really, you should be upset at yourself for waiting this long to let somebody go.
That's right. Because that's your job as a manager.
Yeah. You have to lead. And it goes back to good to great or built to last. Like, you got to put the right person in the right seat on the right bus.
Yep. That's right. And get the wrong people off the bus.
Yeah, you got to get the wrong people off the bus. And really how I illustrate this for our management staff when they have to let someone go is that when you keep someone on your bus, you are holding them back from the bus that they deserve to be on.
Yep.
Because maybe they're not great for you, but everyone has a purpose in this life.
Yeah.
And if they're not great for you, maybe they really don't want to work for you, but they just feel like they have to because this is their job right now.
Yep.
And sometimes it takes being fired to be forced into a place where you can excel.
Yep.
I know that to be, for me, I got different story, but I got fired when I was like 17 from a job and I hated it. And it pushed me into the place that I am now.
Yeah.
So that's one, waiting too long to fire people. 2 is hiring people too quickly, right?
Yes.
Sort of like the converse, like, oh, we need somebody today.
Yeah.
You might just need to suck it up for
Yeah.
a week to find the right person, or 3 weeks or 5 weeks or 2 months.
Wait for that pay player.
Yeah. Have a diligent, consistent, documented interview process. For me, and this is different for everybody, especially this is really applicable to small business, but especially for management, I don't like to bring people on that I don't see myself enjoying time with.
Have you heard of the airport rule in recruitment?
Nope.
So someone told me this on the cast. I hadn't heard of it easier, but when you're recruiting someone, you should think, if you're in transit, flying around America somewhere and your connecting flight gets delayed by 5 hours, could you spend 5 hours with that person in the airport?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm very particular about who I spend my time with. So it's kind of hard for me to hire,
Yeah.
Because I get annoyed easily and I want to talk about work if we're at work, and I'm not great at small talk. And so, and of course, I don't just consider myself when I hire people, I consider my team. If I'm hiring somebody for the marketing team, one, they're going to interview with my marketing team. I'm not just going to keep it in a silo. But two, I really consider, will he or she vibe with Kaylee? Will he or she vibe with Tara? Will he or she vibe with Mike? Because that's a really strong unit. And I don't want to throw them for a curveball. Now, I do love outliers, but they still have to have some common interests.
Yep.
So that's another thing, man. Hiring people that fit the team.
Cultural.
So those are two, I think.
And have you listened to any of the Manager Tools podcasts or read either of the books?
Mm-mm.
I'll send those through to you as well, but I highly recommend, because I think management resources or training material on how to improve as a manager or how, as an owner, it gets their managers up to a better level. There's just not enough great quality content out there. And the Manager Tools guys have been going 15 years now, I think. June 2005 they started. It's the number 1 business podcast on the internet. I had Mark on the cast a few weeks ago. Actually, I'll shoot you that cast. 250 million downloads to date, and they do great things. And the 2 books he's written, The Effective Manager and The Effective Hiring Manager. So I highly recommend both those. I'll shoot you through that after this. And tell our audience how you've handled balance.
I'm big on time management. Before you approach the question, how can I live a balanced life? You need to approach the question, how am I managing my time?
Yep.
Because it's all in there. And I say that I'm lucky in retrospect, but I mentioned earlier that I was on house arrest for 2 weeks, or 2 years. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And every Sunday on house arrest, you go to your correctional officer, you go to the office, and you bring a sheet of paper that has 168 hours outlined. And you have to draw in every single thing that you plan on doing next week.
Wow.
If you don't draw it in, and if you don't draw it in, you don't get to do it, because you can't just text them on Wednesday and say, hey, I totally forgot. I need to pick my mom up from the airport,
Yeah.
So school was in there, work was in there. You get 1 hour a week to go to Walmart. If you've got a job interview, if you need to stay late after class to talk to your professor, that all has to be planned in advance. It has to be put on your schedule and it has to be approved. He can come by your house after, where it says you're supposed to be home. If you're not home, you go into prison.
Yeah.
So I had to get extremely good because I wanted to be productive. I didn't want to be at home. So I tried to fill my time with things that were approvable. And so I live my life the same way, like my gym time, my wake up time, my sleep time, my eating time, those are all relatively the same.
Yeah.
And that allows for balance because I know when I peak, right? So when to do my best work. I know when to do my low level work when I'm dragging. I know when I get my second coffee typically,
Yeah.
And so it goes back to time management and a piece of self-awareness, which I would say journaling. So time management and journaling, but time management piece, I'll make this as short as possible. I do what's called a time budget. And this should be easier than your financial budget because every week God gives us 168 hours.
Yep.
Let's assume that you sleep 7 hours a night. That's minus 49. Let's assume that you work 50 hours a week. That's minus 50. Let's assume that you go to the gym an hour a day, 3 days a week. That's minus 3. You have date night. That's 3 hours. You need to put in everything. Picking your kids up from school, that takes time. One of the examples I think is radical, but it makes sense, is I eat about 6 times a day and it takes me 15 minutes to eat each time. That's an hour and a half each day. An hour and a half times 7, that's 10 hours a week.
Yep.
I factor that stuff in so I can either say yes to commitments or say no.
Yep.
I can say yes to more work or say no. And so I highly recommend time budgeting.
I think what you touched on a minute ago, the working in context. So the best time of the day when you're highly creative, for me, it's early in the morning. So for example, I started at 5:30 this morning because that's when I do my best writing, whether it's a strategic document or a large email or, the courses I'm writing at the moment. And I think that's really, really a powerful change. A lot of people if they tap into when they do their best work, and it's why I've now got the rule of I don't have meetings in the mornings because that's my highest energy time and focus. And so all my meetings are in the afternoons where you can still be productive and have those conversations, but you don't have to be as on as when you need to be deep in a document.
Heck yeah.
Have you read Cal Newport's book, Deep Work?
Yes. So good.
There we go. 1 out of 3 that I suggested. It's a great book. It's phenomenal. Yeah. And sorry, I did. Yeah. Did you want to say anything on that? Sorry.
I was going to say, for people like me, if you're going to grab that book, you gotta stay to the end.
Yes.
Because I had to remind myself, be open-minded. The stuff he's talking about in the beginning and the middle is very interesting, but it's not for me.
Yep.
I can't spend 3 days on something, Yeah. I don't have that luxury. So at the end, he goes into context on how to balance, people like us that we don't spend 40 hours a week on a website design, bouncing from meetings to writing short things to writing long things to, so stick with the book and you'll get a lot out of it.
Yeah, I think it was a good point he made. It's courses for horses. So everyone's different. Here are 2 or 3 different things you can do in this. It's one area that he was talking about, and that was great. What are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Make your people a priority, number one. That's something that I would struggle with from time to time because I make growth a priority. I make our customers a priority. But you got to remember at the end of the day, your people are what's going to drive growth and help your customers. And so you need to be just as strategic about your company culture as you are about company growth, as you are about managing your numbers. And I mean, we have, for example, beginning of the week, we have what's called a heads up meeting, where half of it is personal and half of it is professional. We're going over some analytics and stuff. We're also saying, what are 2 wins of the week last week for you, personal and professional? What was your favorite part about the weekend? What did you learn this week? What are your personal goals and how can we hold each other accountable as a team? And that's something that I started doing 5 years ago. And it's normal to me now. But when I tell other business owners that, they're like, what? You talk about personal goals?
I think that's great. I think it's really good. And that's in a team environment. It's not one-on-one.
Yeah. A team environment.
Yep.
And it's a norm. It's what we do every Monday. And then on Friday, we follow up with how did the week go? How are you doing on your goals? And so that's one thing that we've made normal, but it was an investment I made early on. I would say depending on your team size, either doing monthly or quarterly gatherings with everybody.
Yes, I agree.
Potlucks or don't just get together for the sake of getting together. Be creative, have some fun questions, do a white elephant for Christmas, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I wrote a blog post on this, having a fun budget. So about 1% of either your profits or sales, whatever, go into the fun budget. And that's whether it's celebrating birthdays or successes in the companies or a monthly event that someone organizes and, other celebrations around the year.
Yeah, nice.
So do you do one-on-ones with your direct reports each week?
Yeah, we used to. We used to do them weekly. Now it's sort of ad hoc. Because I felt like they weren't as organic, because I'm pretty close with my direct reports. Mm-hmm. So we would sort of button up and meet at Thursday at 12. It was always just we have these high expectations. Mm-hmm. Our staff, we have a pretty small business, so me and my direct reports are talking almost every day.
Yeah.
So when we sit down and we meet at 12, it's let's act like we're friends. It's we do that every day. So we just have really, really, really open lines of communication to where it's if Mike's hey man, do you have 15 minutes tomorrow for us to do a review? I've got some things I want to run by you that I'm working on that we talked about last week. It's yes, I will make time for you tomorrow. So my direct reports just know that they're my number one priority, as bad as that sounds in relation to all my other employees. Mm-hmm. So I make myself available. And for me, it's worked out a lot better that way. We have this expectation where I said, at one point, Mike, Chris, Kaylee, I want to stop having these weekly meetings because I feel like they're too structured. We're coming with high expectations when we really just have a couple line items and some conversation. I want you guys to make sure you let me know when you need help. I want to give you more freedom with your schedule, honestly. Try to eliminate the meetings as much. And if you need me, just let me know. And they've been really, really good at that. And of course, from time to time, I'm like, hey, we haven't met in 2 weeks. And they're like, yeah, it's actually true. Can we get together tomorrow? So that's how it's worked for me. But I recommend starting with a more traditional approach.
Yep. Have a listen to the cast I did with Mark from Manage Tools a few weeks ago. And if you listen to the Trinity casts, which are in the basics, one of the tools in the Trinity's series is the one-on-ones. And, I'm a big advocate of, for every full-time director you've got, you have that 30-minute one-on-one each week. First 10 minutes is for them to talk. Next 10 minutes is for the manager. And really importantly, the last 10 minutes is to talk about their professional development. What are we doing to develop you in this one area this quarter to make you better at this one thing? Is it an online course? Is it me coaching you outside of this session, or getting another coach, or is it just reading books and podcasts, etc.?
Yeah. So when we did these direct reports, it was, I think, 6 questions that I would ask. And the first one is, how are you doing?
Yep. That's the first question I ask. It's a great open question, because if they've got shit going on at home, that's the opportunity for them to open up and tell you.
Because they don't even know what you mean by it. So they're like, do you mean personally, professionally? It's like, well, just what comes to mind?
Yeah.
So the first thing is, how are you doing? The next thing, depending on what we got working on, is like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well would you say that your performance is lately? And then what would you do to change that, if anything? So I really let them self-evaluate. And then I ask the same question with our team. How's the team doing?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say the team's great, or, you know what, the team's da-da-da. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10 as a unit, how's the team operating? Okay, how do you think we can change that? So I ask the same question, and then I follow up. So I guess it's 9 questions. I follow up, how am I doing?
Yeah.
And it usually throws people off, but they get used to it. You do it enough. Okay, scale of 1 to 10. How's my performance as a leader, as being a responsible employee, coworker? And then what can I do to change it? And so
I like that. It's good.
We run it back, and they get pretty transparent. And we used to do that weekly, but then it got like to where a week later they're like, Jared, nothing's changed from a week. So you're doing really good with that one thing, and I'm doing good with that one thing. And I'm like, yes, true. So let's do this when you want to do it, but let's not let it go a month or something like that.
Yeah. And how much professional development have you invested in yourself over the last 6 years?
As much as possible. I'm a radically different person than I was 6 years ago, 2 months ago, a week ago. I'm not like a crazy read a book a week person. I read about 15 books a year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big reader, but like I said earlier, anything that I read, as long as I like what I get, I'm applying it in real time, and I'm teaching it to our staff.
Yep.
So back to the culture thing, I forgot to mention this. Every Wednesday we have a leadership teaching. It's a 10 to 15 minute practical, applicable teaching on something related to leadership, and all the staff does it. So each week somebody else teaches. For the first couple of years I did it, and then I realized, this isn't raising up leaders. This is teaching employees.
Yes.
And I want to raise up leaders. And so at first it was uncomfortable for them. And I said, just pick a topic you're interested in. And I don't dictate the topics. One time a girl taught on how to best take advantage of your vacation time. Good leaders take good advantage of their vacation time, right? Yep. They set up a fun out of office email, stuff like that, like practical.
That's good.
And then when it's done, they stand up for it. When it's done, we clap, we take a picture, and then we talk about it. What did you think? What did you think? And they've actually gotten good enough to where they actually engage the small audience, the 4 or 5 of us. And they say, Jared, what did you think about number 3 or whatever? So that's actually my favorite part of our culture, I think.
That's good. And have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
Intermittently. My mentor journey is complicated. I think one of the reasons why I'm an entrepreneur is because I had a leadership deficit growing up and even in my professional career. So eventually I just was like, you know what, everybody sucks. I'm going to work for myself.
Yeah.
So I haven't ever really worked for a guy or a gal that, I can reflect on and say they taught me everything. I'm great at sales because there's a couple sales guys I worked under, but I wouldn't call them mentors. I wouldn't call them good people in general. And so, but I have had the opportunity over the years to be around some people who have rubbed off on me. I didn't have the opportunity to spend enough time with them to call them a mentor or anything, but I really just try to be a sponge. Whether it's being in a men's group I got invited to with a bunch of older guys, or small groups at church, or a good podcast. I mean, books have become my mentor, honestly.
Yep.
So when people are like, who's your mentor? It's like my last favorite book is my mentor.
And do you have a board of directors or advisors?
Yeah. I have a small group of really close guy friends. We call it a mastermind group, board of directors, whatever. There's 4 of us. We travel once a quarter to some new destination, and we have sort of a good 3-day trip where we work out somewhere, we go hiking or do some type of activity there. Long story short, though, I've got these guys. We're a part of a Marco Polo group, which is an app where you can FaceTime and like a group FaceTime. And so that's my board of directors. That's a group of people that during the toughest times at Superfit helped me not to give up, and maybe even offer some wisdom or some practical advice. And even in my personal life, offer a lot of stability and leadership. So yeah, 4 guys, and then a guy that's not really in this particular group, but he's my best friend. He's an older guy, and he's served as like a big brother for me. So I've got 5 guys that I can really lean on.
Great. And those 4 guys you go away with, they're business owners themselves?
Yeah, in their own right. One of them is a small business lender and real estate investor. He's got a bunch of properties in like the Jersey area, and he's building a nursing home or something. They don't call them nursing homes anymore, but whatever it is. So he's like in that space. We get to learn about, and he's in finance. Right. We get to learn a lot about finance and real estate from him.
Yep.
And then another buddy of mine is a leadership consultant for big companies. One of them being like Chick-fil-A, things like that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Another buddy of mine, he's actually got a fitness business, but he works full time in a corporate job as well. So he's got that corporate job perspective. It's a really interesting dynamic. One of them is Nigerian. One of them is Puerto Rican. One of them is from France, but he's Muslim and Asian. So it's like, I'm this basic white guy, and they all live in different states, and we're all believers, and we're all into fitness. So it's like, man, we just mesh. Like
that's great. Yeah. What a trip. Well, Jared, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
For me, getting money.
Favorite business? Yep.
No, I was just going to say getting money. I don't know if that's relative anymore because the government's doing a lot of things to help with diversity and all that stuff, but getting funding was extremely difficult for us. So we had to fight tooth and nail, and we had to be extremely scrappy, but growing the company was never difficult for me.
Yep. Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Good to Great.
Love it. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Google. And the Craig Groeschel leadership podcast helped me a lot in my early leadership journey.
And one tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
A business coach. Or do you mean like a physical tool?
No, it can be anything. Just one tool. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I never had a business coach, but being one now and watching how dramatically that helps small business owners, I would say find a good business coach.
Yep. And finally, my favorite question, what would you tell yourself on day 1 of starting out?
Strap yourself in.
Well, Jared, thanks for your time today. I think the audience will get a lot of value and fun out of our talk today. And I really appreciate you coming on the cast, and congratulations on the success to date for you and the team. And looking forward to having you back in a few years.
Thanks, my man. I appreciate being on, Troy. It's been a pleasure.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.